Hello viewers, hope you're all doing good. Welcome to this video. I'm Venkat and this is Just Me an Open Source channel. Alright, so in this video I'm going to be showing you how to deploy a Nextcloud instance in your Kubernetes cluster. Recently I was helping a user who was trying to deploy Nextcloud in his cluster and was having some problems. So I tried it myself in my lab environment and it worked very well. So I thought of making it as a video so everybody can be, it might be useful to someone who is looking for Nextcloud. Okay, so Nextcloud is like a file sharing server, file sharing service like OwnCloud, Dropbox, and so on, Google Drive. So you can upload files, you can share it with your with other users, and so on. So Nextcloud, let's see how we can deploy it in your Kubernetes cluster. So I'm going to be using Helm to deploy Nextcloud in the Kubernetes cluster. So to follow this video, you have to have a certain setup, which I've covered in all my previous videos. So the first thing you need is, so my setup is, I've got kubectl get nodes. So I've got 3 node cluster. It is an LXC cluster. So if you want to know about provisioning cluster using LXC, I've done a video on it. I'll put a link to the description of all the videos that I've used, of all the concepts that I've used in this video, in the description. So getting started with LXC will give you a good understanding of how LXC works and how to start using LXC containers, and then setting up an Kubernetes cluster using LXC containers. And then in this demo, we need Nginx controller. So I'll be using Nginx ingress controller. So I've done a video on that as well. And finally, more importantly, I'm going to be using Cert Manager for Let's Encrypt certificates to protect the Nextcloud web page using HTTPS. So that's using Cert Manager, and I've also done a video on that, how to use Let's Encrypt certificate using Cert Manager or something. So those are the requirements if you want to follow along this video. LXC containers, but don't worry if you've got a cluster of any form. It doesn't have to be LXC containers. So it can be a Vagrant environment, or it can be your own Kubernetes cluster. It doesn't matter what version of Kubernetes you are running. Uh, but bear in mind, I'm not using persistent volumes in this demo. So if you want, you can follow my videos. I've done a couple of videos, how to use NFS provisioner and how to use dynamic persistent volume provisioning if you want to use that. And while I'm going through the Helm installation, I'll tell you how to enable persistence. But for this video, I'm not going to be using persistence. But if you are using Nextcloud in production, please use and this Helm installation, I'm going to install it as a deployment with one replica. But in production, it would be helpful if you install that as a stateful set or with a deployment of more replicas with persistence enabled, right? Okay, so if I restart the Nextcloud pod, it's gonna recreate everything. So there's no persistence. So that's a disclaimer. So bear in mind. Okay, so what version of Kubernetes I've got? kubectl version minus minus short. Client version 1.14.3, server version is 1.14.3. So this is my Kubernetes environment from a week ago. As you can see here, it's actually 2 days. The age is 2 days, but uh, no, I have actually used my snapshot. Okay, but if you don't know, Kubernetes has released its latest major version 1.15 with lots of major enhancements and improvements. They've also introduced an events API, which is in alpha stage. But for this demo, I'm going to go with the previous version 1.14.3. So that doesn't matter. Whatever version of Kubernetes you've got, it should work. Okay, so ingress controller, kubectl get namespace. So you can see the Nginx ingress namespace and the cert manager namespace. kubectl get all minus n ingress Nginx ingress. So that's the ingress controller running as a daemon set on the 2 worker nodes that I've got. So you need ingress controllers on the worker nodes. So I've done a detailed video on ingress controller. Please watch the ingress controller and the Let's Encrypt Cert Manager video if you want more details. But I've done all the setups in this video. I'm just going to dive straight into the Nextcloud installation. kubectl get all minus n cert manager. So I've got the Let's Encrypt Cert Manager thing set up. Um, okay, so how do we install Nextcloud? We can install Nextcloud using the Helm module, Helm installation. So if I do Helm list, so I've got Cert Manager. Cert Manager is installed via Helm. So the only app you see is Cert Manager. Okay, so Helm search Nextcloud. So there is one app available, one chart available, stable Nextcloud version. Chart version is 1.3.0 and the app version is 16.0.1, and the description is a file sharing server that puts the control and security in your hands. Okay, so I'm not going to install. I'm just going to show you what customization you can do before you install Nextcloud into your cluster. So to do that, you can download the values file from this chart. To do that, Helm inspect values, name of the chart, Nextcloud, and pipe that to a temporary file, nextcloud.values. Okay, so that's done. Let's take a look at that file. Temp nextcloud.values. If I go image repository Nextcloud, it's pulling pull policy if not present. It's all pretty standard. Name override, full name override. I'm just gonna leave that blank. If you want, you can customize it. Replica count, I'm gonna leave it as 1. Um, and ingress enabled false. I'm not going to enable ingress, but I'm going to take care of ingress myself because I've got the Nginx ingress controller. I'm going to deploy an ingress resource with HTTPS TLS certificates. So I don't want ingress enabled in this chart. I can do it myself. And if I further scroll down, there's a Nextcloud here, and the host is important. So that's the base URL, nextcloud.cube.home. You can name it anything, nextcloud.example.com or nextcloud.yourdomain.com, whatever it is, but make sure, but please note that host name. This is the DNS entry that you need to make in your DNS server. Or if you don't have it, that's the one that you need to put in the etc host file, which I've already done. If I show you um, cat etc host, so nextcloud.cube.home, I've added that to my etc host file on my host machine. And the IP address, this IP address is the IP address of my load balancer. So if you watched my Nginx ingress controller video, you know that we need a HA proxy load balancer. So that load balances the traffic between the worker nodes. So that's the IP address of the load balancer. The load balancer is going to proxy the request to one of the worker node, and the worker node has the ingress controller which knows where to route the traffic to if it sees nextcloud.cube.home. So we will be deploying an ingress resource that will tell you if the host name is nextcloud.cube.home, please forward the traffic to a particular service. Okay. LXC list. So I've got the HA proxy, and 1092.250.90 is the IP address, which I mapped to nextcloud.cube.home. And if I log into the HA proxy node, vi etc HA proxy configuration. So that's my configuration at the moment. So in Cert Manager video, I've explained what this one does. I'll quickly go through that. So you've got a front end listening on port 443. So the load balancer is listening only on port 443. So we need to, I'll come to that a bit later. Mode is TCP, that's important. Option default backend is HTTP, and the backend is here. Again, mode is TCP. Don't ignore the mode or don't set mode to HTTP, because we are proxying the request to the ingress controller. So this load balancer doesn't know about your SSL certificates. So we are proxying whatever the request comes in on port 443 to the ingress controller to one of the worker nodes. And the servers, the worker nodes, the IP address of the worker nodes on port 443. Okay, so that's their netstat minus nlcp. Um, netstat minus nlcp. So it should be listening on port 43. Systemctl status HA proxy. HA proxy is not running. That's the reason. Systemctl start HA proxy. Systemctl start HA proxy. Okay, systemctl status HA proxy. That's running netstat minus nlcp, and now you can see the only port this load balancer is listening on is 443. Okay. Let's go through the values file again. So the username and the password here is the initial username and password that you need to log into the Nextcloud, the admin user account, the admin account to log in to your Nextcloud. So if you want, you can change it here. I'm going to change that to admin, and the password is also admin. Update 0, data directory, var www.html data, table prefix, mail is disabled, enabled is false, which means we haven't configured mail. If you want, you can enable it to true and all those things. SMTP, your worker nodes needs to have the email configuration. So I'm not going to touch that one. So I'm going to leave that disabled, mail. So Nextcloud internal database is enabled. So if you want to deploy Nextcloud in production, go with a separate external database, not with the internal one. This one is for a quick testing development purpose. It can't scale better. It can be okay for a smaller instance, but for larger instance with multiple user accounts, it's better to have a separate external database server. So for this demo, I'll just leave it as the internal database. So enabled is true. But if you've got an external database server set up already, you change this to false. Enabled is false, so that we are not using internal database. And the external database configuration comes in here. So you need to change this to true, the host name of your database server, the database user, database password, and the name of the database that you're trying to connect. So that's the external database if you have got a database server set up already. There is also another option. If you want this Helm installation to also deploy a MariaDB database, you can do that. Set the internal database to false, external database to false, and enable this MariaDB, and you can give the name, user, password for the database details. Persistence, if you want, you can enable persistence, but you need to have a dynamic provisioner setup in your cluster. I don't have. I'm also not going to use the MariaDB that comes with this chart. As I said, I'm going to use the internal database. But if you want to deploy a MariaDB instance in your cluster as part of the Nextcloud instance, you can enable MariaDB. That's good. And if you want, you can change the size of the thing. This MariaDB will be deployed as a stateful set, not as a deployment. So obviously, all the databases needs to be a stateful set. Okay, cron job, don't worry about that. Service type is cluster IP, and the service that Nextcloud is going to listen on port 8080. Load balancer IP nil. Don't worry about that at the moment. The service is not exposed to the outside world, so the service is created with the type cluster IP. So internally within the cluster, the service is accessible, but not outside the cluster. So that's where we are going to deploy the ingress resource and give the outside world access to this service, right? And finally, persistence enabled is false. So if you've got a dynamic provisioner setup in your cluster, you can enable this to true. And if you've got a special storage class, uncomment this and update the name of the storage class. If you have followed my dynamic NFS provisioner video, I didn't set the default storage class, but you can add a default storage class. So you don't have to specify the storage class here. So if you've got a dynamic provisioner set up with a default storage class set, so this will work. Size is 8 gig. Resources, that's the liveness probe, readiness probe. If you want, you can change the resource limits and resource requests. So this one says the resource request is I need to schedule the Nextcloud instance to a worker node that has at least zero point 0.1 CPU, 100 millicore, and 128 meg of memory available. And the limit, it says my Nextcloud instance is not going to use more than 128 meg, and it's not going to use zero point 0.1 of my CPU. So that's a very low limit. I'm just going to leave that as a default. I'm not going to enable any resource limits or requests. But if you want to control your deployment, you can set the limits. And that's all it. I haven't edited anything except the default username and password. Okay, let's try and deploy this Helm chart. So the command to deploy is Helm install stable Nextcloud minus minus values file. It doesn't matter because we haven't changed. Oh, actually, we've changed the password. So if you have changed anything, use the minus minus values and the updated values file. If you haven't changed anything at all, then you don't have to use the values option. Nextcloud dot values, and let's give this app a name. Otherwise, it will give you generate a random name. Name Nextcloud. Okay, so that's done, and you can see it has deployed a deployment with one replica and a pod, a secret, Nextcloud secret, and a service of type cluster IP. Port is 8080. Okay. kubectl get all, and it's running, but it's not ready yet. I think it's doing the readiness check at the moment. So there is liveness check. So that's running, and there is also readiness check. And we have to wait a little while before the pod is ready to serve. And we have the Nextcloud cluster here, the cluster IP internally. um all the applications can access this service using the DNS name, internal DNS name, Nextcloud dot default dot svc dot cube dot local or something, or through the IP address. But we are going to uh, create an ingress resource so that we can access it from the outside world, from outside the cluster. Replica said, let's try that one more time. kubectl get all. Okay, cool. So that's running now, and our Nextcloud instance is up and running, and the service is also available. Okay, so now I'm going to create an ingress resource. I've got the ingress controller, and while deploying the ingress resource, you need to specify the cert manager stuff, the TLS certificates, and so on. So let's do that now. I'm going to git clone my Kubernetes repository, git clone github.com, just me an open source slash Kubernetes. The link will be in the description if you want it. And cd to Kubernetes, cd to YAMLs, and cd to cert manager demo. If I do ls here, so don't worry about the other files. I'm only interested in the ingress file. So this is the ingress that I created for that demo purpose when I showed you the Let's Encrypt Cert Manager demo. So I'm going to reuse that ingress resource instead of writing everything from scratch. So vi ingress resource.yaml. Okay, the kind is ingress, name is ingress resource. Let's leave the name ingress. It can be anything if you want to change. So the annotation is important. If you don't do that, you won't get the SSL certificates. So we've added an annotation to this ingress resource that says cert manager and the cluster issuer is Let's Encrypt staging. So if you followed my cert manager video, you know about these things. Okay, so I'm going to change the hosts. And if you remember in the values.yaml file, we had this host name set to nextcloud.cube.home. I'm going to change that again here to nextcloud.cube.home path. So, okay, so whenever a request comes to nextcloud.cube.home, the Nginx ingress controller will route the traffic to this backend, and the service name is Nextcloud, and we know that Nextcloud is listening on port 8080. So that's all needed. kubectl gets all and the name of the service. So that's the service we are routing the traffic to, and we need to create that ingress resource. kubectl create -f ingress resource.yaml. So that ingress is created. kubectl get ingress. Okay, so we've got one ingress for the host nextcloud.cube.home. Let's see some details about it. kubectl describe ingress resource. Okay, so let's encrypt staging. The TLS terminates at nextcloud.cube.home. Host name is that one, and the backend is the Nextcloud service, port 8080. If you're wondering what this IP address is, it's the IP address of the Nextcloud pod. kubectl get pods -o white. So if you can see the Nextcloud pod, and the IP address is 10.244.2.7, which is here 10.244.2.7. Okay, so I think we are all good now. kubectl get ingress. Okay, so now from our host machine, from outside our cluster, we should be able to access um, the service, the Nextcloud service. Cat etc host. So I've already added the nextcloud.cube.home to my host file, and it's pointing to the load balancer, and the load balancer is listening on port 443, and it will route the traffic to one of the worker nodes where the Nginx controller is running, and the Nginx controller ingress controller will look at the host name. So it's nextcloud.cube.home, and we have defined an ingress resource. So any request coming for nextcloud.cube.home will be routed to the service Nextcloud running on port 8080. That service will load balance to the pod actually. So we've got just one replica, so all the traffic goes to that pod. Okay, so since the load balancer is listening on port 443, you have to use HTTPS. So if you don't use that, nextcloud.cube.home, you will see this page because our load balancer is not listening on the default port 80. So we have to go with HTTPS nextcloud.cube.home. There you go. So that's the Let's Encrypt magic. So we've got the certificate. Don't worry about the warning because it's a staging certificate, which is a fake SSL certificate, self-signed certificate. Um, you can go here, click the certificate. It's issued by the Cert Manager organization, and the common name is nextcloud.cube.home, and so on. So don't worry about that. Click Advanced, click Proceed to Nextcloud, and the site can't be reached. And for the eagle eyes there, you might have noticed our URL has again changed to HTTP. So we're trying to access nextcloud.cube.home, and once you enter, it redirects to another page, the login page. And when it redirects, it loses the HTTPS and it goes to HTTP. So how do we make it sticky? How do we always redirect HTTP to HTTPS? So for example, if you type http nextcloud.cube.home, it should redirect you automatically to https because you don't always want to type https before the URL. So to do that, we need to update our load balancers configuration. I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, lxa exec hproxy bash. So I'm logging into my hproxy node, and I'm going to edit the hproxy configuration file. Okay, so default, the front end and the back end are there listening for port 443. So I'm going to add another front end for port 80. Okay. So all these configurations, you can find it in my GitHub repository, or in my YouTube video about the Cert Manager thing. In the Cert Manager video, I explained how to configure the load balancer. Front end, I'm going to add another front end calling it http underscore insecure bind star colon 80. And so this line here is important. So this is the line where we are saying whatever request comes into port 80 redirected to port 443, right? Redirect scheme is HTTPS, code is 301. So the HTTPS status code 301 is for the redirect. If you are trying to access a resource that has been moved to a different location, you will get the code 301. So code is 301, if not of SSL underscore FC. Don't ask me what this code does. All I know is this code redirects all the requests coming in on port 80 to port 443. Just the redirect request, but I don't know the exact meaning of each and every options here. So that's all it's needed. Save it and restart the HAProxy service. Systemctl restart HAProxy netstat minus nlcp. So now you can see our HAProxy is listening on port 80 as well. Exit out of HAProxy. Now if I just type http nextcloud.cube.home, there you go. You see, it has automatically redirected me to the HTTPS site, and the login page is also using the HTTPS. So every single URL will be using the Nextcloud thing. Okay, so if you remember, in the values file, we changed the password to admin. So the username is admin and the password is also admin. Click login, and there you go. So that's your Nextcloud instance. If you want, you can go through the quick demo, and here is the file sharing service like OwnCloud or Dropbox. So you can click in the documents. You can see here, if you want to upload documents, you can upload it. Click the plus icon, upload file, and it will open up the file browser. Okay, and let's say, for example, if I delete everything, where is the delete? Right click, delete. Okay, so everything is gone. Let's go to all files. So everything is gone. This is just to show you that the persistence is disabled. So if I kill the pod and restart it, it's going to create all the files again because persistence is not enabled. kubectl get pods, kubectl delete pod nextcloud. So that's getting deleted. kubectl get all, and you can see that one is getting terminated and a new pod is getting created. That's running, but it's not ready yet. So once it's ready, we will try and access it. kubectl get pods, it's still running. kubectl get pods, watch kubectl get pods. 29 seconds. Okay, let's give it a few more seconds. Okay, so the Nextcloud instance is ready. Now let's try and access it. http nextcloud cube.home, admin, password is admin. You're logging in, and see, it's also again started showing you the welcome page, and you can see all the documents are here. Basically, when we deleted the pod, it has recreated it, because there was no persistence. Every pod comes with its own storage, right? So it's not a persistent volume stored somewhere. So bear that in mind. If you want to deploy this in production, please enable persistence, otherwise it's not a production use case. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to mention is the important thing is the URL. So internally, Nextcloud will allow only certain IP address or certain URLs. So nextcloud.cube.home is one of them, And if you map a URL, a different URL in the DNS, it won't work. It will show you a different error. So to test that, I'm going to quickly show you a different setup. So let's say kubectl get all. At the moment, the service is only exposed internally using cluster IP. Let's change that to node port. Um, kubectl edit service nextcloud. So I'm going to change this to, I'm going to delete the cluster IP. Um, Type is node port. Save it. Okay, so that doesn't seem to be working. A copy of your generator service nextcloud is invalid. Okay. kubectl edit service nextcloud. Let's change the type to node port. Okay, the service is now edited. kubectl get service. Okay, so Nextcloud is also a node port, which can be accessed using either kworker 1 or kworker 2, and on port 30874. Let's try and access it. HTTP, this is not HTTPS. This is not going via the ingress or load balancer or anything. We are just trying to access directly the worker node using node port. So you can just use HTTP. That's fine. HTTP kworker 1, for example, colon, the node port is 30874, 30874. There you go. So if you're using a different URL, this is what you will notice. Access through untrusted domain. Please contact your administrator if you are an administrator and edit the trusted domains. So I'm going to show you where you need to edit this. So by default, nextcloud.cube.home is the only allowed URL. If you use anything else, the app is actually running fine, but it won't let you log in because the base URL is not set to kworker1. So that's the reason you're seeing this error. kubectl get pods. I'm going to exec into the pod and show you where the configuration is. kubectl exec -it nextcloud, and let's start a bash. Okay, so by default the root is var www.html, and if you look in here, there is a config directory, cd to config, and there is config.php. vi config.php. I guess there won't be any vi, yeah, because this is a container, lightweight container. We need to install vi. I think it's an app system app get update. I think it's a Debian or an Ubuntu base image. Okay, so apt get install vi, apt get install vim. Is that available? Yeah, vim is available. Okay, vim is installed. Vi config.php. There you go. And trusted domain, where is it? Yeah, here it is, trusted domain. So you can see here, um, it's only allowing the local host or the nextcloud.cube.home URL. So if you want to add additional URL, just go ahead and edit that. To okay, let me close this and use the normal vi. Syntax off. Okay, that's better. Um, Trusted domains is here, and I'm going to add another entry here within quotes. You need to enter the URL of this one here, kworker1 colon 30874, and a comma finally, if you want to add more entries to it. Okay, so that's done. And if I try it again, so now you can see that it lets you log in. Admin. Okay, so that's there, no problem. But Now, as it's a node port service, you can access it through any worker node. Let's try and access it using the second worker node, kworker2. HTTP kworker2 colon 30874. And you see access to untrusted domain because our config.php, we only added the kworker1 URL. So this is something to bear in mind. If you get access denied or this type of error, you need to update the config.php to match the URL that you're trying to use. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to show you. I think I've covered everything. Yep. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for your time watching this video. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure to click the subscribe button. And if you like this video, please share it with your friends. And if you've got any doubt or any questions, please don't hesitate to leave me a comment. I'll be more than happy to help you. And the viewer who asked me, who had problems with the Nextcloud, I forgot his name actually, but hi. See if this one helps. Otherwise, I'll keep digging and see. I thought you mentioned that you got it working somehow, but this is the proper way. See if this helps. And yeah, I'll see you all in another exciting video. Thanks for your time. Bye bye.